Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. I'm Rafah Yoseni.
I'm Adesoa Omoron.
And I am Shaiton Atigari. Now, starting with most African countries and indeed Nigeria has stepped up in tackling the issue of child abuse across the 36 states of the Federation. With this kind of concerted efforts, one would have thought that this menace would have been reduced to the barest minimum. However, a critical look at the Nigerian society shows that child abuse is still ongoing and has a huge impact on the mental health of children.
Very well said there. In recent times, the campaign group Human Rights Watch did focus on mental facilities in Nigeria and discovered that thousands of mentally ill people in Nigeria have been kept in chains and in care facilities.
Its researchers visited nearly 30 private and state-run centers across the country. In all but one, they found patients, children inclusive, being chained up. Staff at the facilities say the practice stops the patients from leaving or harming others. In recent months, authorities in Nigeria have carried out a series of raids on religious centers, freeing more than 1,500 people who have been kept in shackles. Well, joining us now from our Abuja studios is Taiwo Akinlami, a UNICEF consultant and child rights advocate. Good morning, Mr. Akinlami. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning.
Great. Let me begin by asking you if you've been able to meet any of the victims from these so-called rehabilitation centers that have been busted across the country in recent times. If you have met any, especially children, what is their current state? Are they getting the needed response at this time? And if you haven't, you heard the report from the International Rights Organization. Why do you think that this is pervasive? Because they did visit even state clinics, state-run hospitals, where people with mental challenges are being chained.
Well, I think that I've not in recent time, I've not come in contact with some of the children that are recently rescued, but we work with children over the years. We work with children over the years.
Go ahead, Mr. Akinlami.
Okay. Concerning the recent cases, I have not had conversations with the recently rescued children. But by virtue of our work, we have worked with children over the years, children that are traumatized, children that are subject of abuse, children that have been chained, that have been dehumanized. Now, one fundamental thing is this. We need to start from what Dr. Nelson Mandela said. He said that there's no keener revelation of the soul of a nation apart from how they treat their children. Now, the way we treat our children is a revelation of our commitment to our children. The nations of the future focus on their children because they know that the future belongs to the children. The nation of the past, underdeveloped nations, they focused on nothing. Now, so the challenge is this. When you find children chained, now the people that have been rescued are the ones that we know. There are other thousands of children that might be going through the same thing that have not been rescued today. The fundamental issue is this. If children have now been rescued, the question we need to be asking is this. What kind of support are we giving to them? What prevailing circumstances necessitated and encouraged them being chained, being abused the way they have been abused? Who is responsible in each of the states when this is happening? Who is the officer? Some people should be answering to the law right now. Some people should be resigning their appointment right now that they have failed in their responsibility to protect children. Some people should be talking to the police right now. I'm not even talking about the people who chained the children, who are responsible for the abuse alone. I'm talking about public officers who swore to protect our children. They are also culpable in this matter. So there's no way we are going to look at a crime that is festering without looking at the institutions that have been put in place to ensure the protection of our children. So when you see what is happening right now, it is institutional failure, it is failure of the state, failure of the system, failure of caregivers. You see, there are 4 rings of protection. The primary caregivers are the parents. The secondary caregivers, you have the state, you have the community, you have the state, you have the international community. What have we found today? The family has failed because the family does not have necessary support from the state. The community has failed, the state has failed. It's high time we began to talk to ourselves and we began to put culpability where culpability belongs and begin to cry out for the protection of the rights of our children.
Okay. Mr. Taiwo Akinlami, I think it was Hillary Clinton that says, it's an African adage, but Hillary Clinton echoed it. She said once, if you had a book about it, it was called "It Takes a Village." The African adage is "It takes a village to raise a child."
Community to raise a child.
It takes a village to raise a child. So, isn't this a reflection of society? Isn't this a reflection of the fact that society is callous towards children in a country where over 20 states in the north have not passed the underage marriage laws for children? Isn't this a reflection that society wants this, that's why it's happening? Isn't this a reflection that the Nigerian society is kind of very wicked and callous towards children?
Well, you know, if you listen to my first contribution, I agree totally that we treat children the way we see them. We see them the way we were seeing growing up. We treat children the way society treated us growing up. So you have a belief system that is not necessarily anti-children, but it's not deliberately pro-children. So what do we find? We find a situation where we talk about children that are abused, and you need to understand that neglect is part of abuse. 13.5 million Nigerian children are out of school. When it comes to child marriage, Nigeria rates second in the recent figure, in the recent statistic released by UNICEF on Monday or Tuesday. So what do you find? You find that we live in a society where our children are treated like animals. Talk about the children that are chained. What about the children that sit on stones, children that sit on used tires, children that are in school and they are supposed to be taught in a classroom that has no roof? What about all of that? Total dehumanization. What about children that are living in highbrow area, densely populated areas, who have no access to shelter, have no access to health care, and all of that? The fundamental issue right now is that the picture is very bad, and I agree with you completely. There is no one family that is powerful enough or equipped enough to raise children, because these children are citizens of Nigeria. They are not grand citizens. They are not. It is not that their parents are citizens. They are now grand citizens. The question today is, let's ask ourselves the critical question: what accrues to the Nigerian child, whether at the upper cross or at the lower cross, by virtue of the fact that they are citizens of Nigeria? Is it health? Is it food? Is it accommodation? All of these things are major issues today. Remove school fees. Now, let's go to the upper cross. Remove school fees from the burden of parents today. They will breathe well. They will sleep well. Their high blood pressure will go down. So those are fundamental issues. I agree with you. The society, to a very large extent, has failed in recognizing the fact that a nation that shares the blood of its own children, a nation that does not pay attention to its own children, a nation that is busy building infrastructure when they build, a nation that is busy building structures where they build, that does not pay attention to the human beings that will run it, is joking. That's why Abraham Lincoln says, these children are the state of humanity is in the hands of children. The way you treat your children is the way you treat your future. And that is why the Indian-American proverb says that we do not inherit the word from our forefathers. We borrow them from our children. So if we borrow the word from our children, the question to us today, in which state are we going to return this borrowed earth to our children? Is a food for thought. It's something we need to continue to call attention to speak truth to power, to hold responsible those who have been elected to take responsibility for the welfare and the security of the people. The Constitution of Nigeria makes it clear the welfare and the security of the people shall be the primary aim of government. When you go to chapter 2 makes provision for education, for shelter, for health, for all of that. But today, what do we find? We find a situation where it appears Nigeria is a non-existent state, and it's very sad.
Very strong points you've made there, Mr. Taiwo Akinlami. And like my co-host rightfully mentioned, it takes a village to raise a child. But I want to bring your attention to the parents in this, because most of these centers that have been shut down, most of these rehabilitation centers in quotes, we find that it's the parents that take their children there. Now, you are a consultant with UNICEF. What's being done to make sure that the reorientation comes from even the parents themselves? Because they believe that they need to, these children need to go through prolonged detention, forced treatments, even electroshock therapy to get through mental health issues. Why are we still having this? They are the ones that are supposed to be taking care of these children, but then they have a different mindset on how to take care of them.
Parents also are victims. Most of the parents who take their children to that place are poor parents. They are the hewers of wood and drawers of water, the oipoloi, the wretched of the earth, as fans for now we refer to them. These are the people who take their children to these kind of places. Now, the truth of the matter is that there are four rings of protection, as I've said. You have the family, you have the community, you have the international, you have the state, and you have the international community. Now, the responsibility of the community and the responsibility of the state and international community is to empower the family economically, socially, so that the family can play their role. That is why since 2010 or thereabout, International Labour Organization began to say that the solution to child labor, for example, is social protection. Access to basic things of life, to clothing, to shelter, to food, to health, to education. That's what is called social protection. When parents lack all of these things, when they do not know where their next meal is coming from, when 82 million Nigerians are living on less than $1 per day, what do you expect? And which regulatory body set up these places, these so-called rehabilitation homes? Which regulatory body gave them license to operate? You know, because if they are not operating, parents will not take their children there. So it is important that we see these parents, these hewers of wood and drawers of water, these oipoloi, the wretched of the earth, we see them not as co-conspirators, but as victims also. They are victims of the system. Now, they are not the people that we should hold responsible. They need reorientation, they need education, but we need to hold the organizations, the government agencies that gives license, the regulatory bodies that give license to these homes to operate, and under their nose, while they were awake, these places were operating before they were busted. Which is that regulatory body in that state? Is it the Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development? Is it the Ministry of Education? Is it the Ministry of Health? Whatever ministry it is, we need to have a public hearing. If it is that money is meeting Central Bank, you are going to set up a public hearing. If it is that there is a problem with oil and gas, you are going to set up a public hearing. If it is on budgeting and allocation, you are going to set up a public hearing. But when it comes to the matters of our children being treated like dogs, being treated like animals, we are not going to set up any public inquiry. The conversation is going to continue the way we are having it here, and it's likely to die that way after the wave has gone down. So what we need to be calling for, what I'm calling for as an individual, is that we need to have when something is happening in droves, we need to have a public inquiry. The Senate must be interested. The houses of assembly of the state in which this matter took place must be interested. We need a public inquiry. Look into this matter. Come out with a position as to what happened, and now we are going to make sure this kind of thing does not repeat itself. Until we do that, we will not be found to be serious about the future of these children. It's not about these children alone. If we don't hold people responsible,
indeed,
bring accountability where it belongs, what is going to happen is that these things just going to continue.
But we do need to go on a quick break, and we're back to talk some more about deterrence and how we can solve all of this and protect our children in Nigeria. Do join us again. Glad to have you back, everyone. You're still watching the morning show here on the Rise News, and we have from our Abuja studios Taiwo Akinlami, UNICEF consultant and child rights advocate, talking about the rights of the Nigerian child. Mr. Akinlami, thank you so much for staying with us. Before we went on that break, you were talking about the reactions so far, especially from government and institutions, and holding people to account. And I want to talk about deterrence. For instance, in Oyo State, where one of the centers was busted, we have the Governor Makinde, who has now said that particular building must go for demolition. It must be demolished. And I wonder what your opinion is on that. Is that too drastic? Is that something we should embrace? Does that serve as enough deterrent to send a message?
It's the way the state behaves. The state, when they are caught pants down, decide to take some sporadic actions that does not speak to the issue. Now, if somebody is found kidnapping children, and keeping them in a place, in shackles. What does the law say? It's important to understand what the law says about physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect. And on the basis of the provisions of the law, you prosecute those who are responsible. And when you are talking about prosecution, there are three levels of offenders here. The first level of offender are the people who created the enabling environment for those homes to exist. Which agency in Lagos or your state is responsible for giving license to people to operate homes? Why has the commissioner of the ministry or the permanent secretary, why has he or she not been called out? Why has he or she not been suspended? Why is there not a public hearing in Oyo State House of Assembly to look into this matter? Why are you demolishing homes? When you demolish the house now, how does that solve the problem? Does that mean somebody is not going to commit the crime tomorrow? We keep running around like headless chickens. When things happen in our domain, it ought not to be so. We have to be strategic. We have to be systematic. We have to look at how do we prevent cases like this. If one government official is brought to book, remember many years ago when Dr. Taiwo Akinlami was a commissioner in the old Western state, and he drove without his driver's license. And when he was arrested, and when he was arrested, what did he do thereafter? He resigned. He resigned his post because he drove without driver's license. Now, he made it abundantly clear that he had a driver's license, but he was not supposed to drive without his driver's license. When are we going to have honorable men and women like that? Who the governor will call to question and say, look, your ministry is responsible for licensing and supervising homes. How come this home existed under your nose? You failed in granting license. You failed in your supervision. Somebody should be asking questions. But when this kind of things happen, we look at only one side. And justice is not a one-way. It's not a one-way traffic. We must look at the authority that is responsible for granting license. We must look at the operator of this place some things must have passed hands for that house to continue to pass hands for that home to continue. Then we must look at authorities that are supposed to supervise. These are things we need to look at. But you see, demolishing the place, I don't think it is the holistic way to handle this matter, in my very honest opinion.
Okay, just to come to you on this, I think it was Karl Marx that said religion is the opium of the masses. And when you look at this goings on, you'll see that it has a religious slant to it. There's always a religious slant. I mean, I was talking about the states in the north, for instance, over 11 states now. I beg your pardon, not the 21 that I did mention. I was talking about the fact that they've not, signed the child right law and domesticated it. And when you see all the centers, there's always a religious slant to it. The bulk of the work should be decongesting religious perspectives, because the religion itself has a strong pull on the people. And in a country where almost nothing works, there's a big tide of religion. I mean, when you look at the trend of underdeveloped countries, there's a big tide of religion there. So the fulcrum of the matter should be decongesting this religion pool as regards all of this. I mean, what are you doing as regards that? Because we can talk from now till thy kingdom come. If they tell you your child is a witch and they have to flog him, they will flog him.
Yes. You know, in 2010, a woman who claimed to be an evangelist wrote a book and said that if a child is 2 years old and the child cries in the night and you try to pacify the child, that the child does not stop crying, is an agent of the devil. Deal with him or her. And this same woman went to the UK to try to do a program. But NGOs gathered in the UK and made sure she was deported. They reached out to the Home Office and ensured that this woman was deported from the UK. That was the same woman that went to Akwa Ibom State to say that children were witches. And parents were taking their children to so-called deliverance ministers that was driving nails into the skull of their children before BBC, busted that whole arrangement and it became to the fore. It's religion. is religion at that level. Now, the question is, I agree with you completely that religion is the opium of the people. Now, when you drink opium, you forget about your sorrow, forget about your pain, forgetting that when you forget about your pain, the pain does not go away. When the effect of the opium wears out, you are going to come back to the reality that you are dealing with. So the question, therefore, is there was a time in this country where we had MAMSA. I think later we have National Orientation Agency. These are agencies of government. What work are they doing to decongest and deconstruct the belief system of the people? You know, because the welfare and the security of the people shall be the primary aim of government. So if the welfare and the security of the people shall be the primary aim of government, we must be interested in the belief system of the people that becomes a hindrance to the protection of our children. Now, the things that we believe about children, the things that we hold dear, the things that are custom, culture, and religion. Now, when you put all of that together, you find out that what really makes abuse rampant in our land is this belief system that does not conform with the reality of how God created us to relate with, how God created children to be related with. So we need to decongest that. And again, when it comes to the issue of child marriage, for example, you see a lot of fraud. Some religious people say that child marriage is promoted by a particular faith. But these same religious people who are saying so, they send their children to Harvard, they send their children to Yale, they send their children to Ivy League universities abroad. But the children of the poor, hewers of wood and drawers of water, they are the ones that are available to be married. The children of the rich, the upper crust, are available to go to school. Have you ever seen a wedding of a political upper crust between his or her daughter and the son, or between a 13-year-old daughter, a 27-year-old son? We have never seen it happen. Even the senator the other day that was marrying 13-year-old, 14-year-old, and the state could not do anything about him, that same senator, the children are not married out at 13. If it is religion, then it should be across board. We should find the people in the political upper crust giving out their children at 13, at 14, and say that's what the faith says. But you find that it's a fraud. It's a way of keeping down the poor so that the poor can continue to be poor. So when you send a girl child to marriage at the age of 13, the opportunity to go to school, the opportunity of shedding off poverty, of becoming the hope of our family is destroyed. So those are the issues. We need to begin to ask ourselves critical questions. I, for one, when I'm asked to talk about child rights, when I run trainings, one of the things that I address is our belief system. This belief system that has become a pain in the neck, this belief system that we promote through culture, through religion, and all of those things. This belief system that does not go across board. You believe that you believe that your own children should be well taken care of, but the children of the poor should sit on stone, should sit in a class that has no roof. These are fundamental issues. So I agree with you completely. We need to continue to do advocacy in the area of deconstruction, in the area of debunking, in the area of delinking, in the area of ensuring that we decongest this belief system and religious system that make it impossible for us to penetrate and protect our children. We NGOs in Nigeria must rise up and do what was done in the UK by showing that woman that you cannot be an abuser of children, you cannot be an architect of abuses of children and come to the UK to say you want to come and run a program. She was disgraced, she was sent out. Those are the kind of things that must be happening in this kind of in our country. We must become a pressure group that is able to look at people who promote religious belief that are inimical to the interests of our children, who is able to bring them to book and ensure that we also put pressure on government to do the needful by doing the right campaign. National Orientation Agency is there. There's Ministry of Information, and all of this is. We should stop by going around, running around with an hate speech, an hate bill that has the intention to curtail the thinking and the aspiration of our people to address the real issues. Because a nation that does not pay attention to its children is not paying attention to its future. Obviously, the nation does not have a future.
Okay, Mr. Akinlami, let's bring our attention now to the foot soldiers and all this, the mental health officials, because we do know that a lot of people a lot of these children have been brought out. We have 300 in Katsina, 67 coming out of inhumane conditions. However, we don't have the facilities and the numbers of psychologists and psychiatrists to treat these children. We're going to go on a short break now, but when we come back, I would like to get your notes on this. Mr. Taiwo Akinlami, can you hear me?
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's quickly talk about
Thank you.
The health officials in all of this, because we do have dwindling numbers between the psychiatrists and the psychologists. The numbers that are coming out, 300 in Katsina, 67 in Kaduna, 259 people. These numbers are alarming. Do we have the right number of people on the other end treating these children? We don't have enough psychiatrists and psychologists. What's UNICEF doing about getting those numbers up to make sure that even when they come out of these homes, they're able to get the proper treatment, the proper allocated time that they need per person? You answer this after the break. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're still joined by Mr. Taiwo Akinlami from our Abuja studios, the UNICEF consultant and child rights advocate. And before the break, I was asking you about the mental health officials. Do we have enough numbers to cater to these children? Like I said, 300 men and boys were brought out of Islamic schools in Kaduna, 67 in Katsina, 259 people just 2 weeks ago. Do we have the numbers to take care of these children?
I think the first thing we need to do is to draw up a treatment plan, which is the fact that the government has Ministry of Health. In those states that are ministries of health, the first thing we need to do is we first need to have a treatment plan that shows how many professionals that we need. I believe that is when I'm talking about professionals, I'm talking about both within the government sector and non-government, non-state actors. So I'm looking at, private individuals who are involved in working with people on the issues of mental health and related matters. Now, so the fundamental question is that all of these things are treated, are shrouded in secrecy. Since this thing happened in the public, I think it is important that we also carry the public along as to what we are doing. I've not seen any call, from government or from the state, the federal government or the state government saying we need good-spirited Nigerians to help in treating these children, to help in providing psychosocial support, to help in helping them to deal with traumatic and post-traumatic disorder. So the question, therefore, is that what is the plan? There first has to be a plan by the state, and it is this plan that can be fine-tuned, that can be shared with mental health professionals and people that deal with related matters. But until we find that, until we are told what is going on, until we are told the level of impact, because, 500 children may go through the same thing. The threshold of each child is different from the other. It is important, so it's going to be individual examination of each child that is involved to know the impact of this illegal detention on their psyche, on their thinking, on their mind, on their sanity and all of that. So I think my advice is that I believe the problem is not going to be whether there is enough professionals. The problem is going to be whether there's a mechanism to network among professionals, both those who are directly dealing with mental health and those who are dealing with who are para professionals in this area. So I don't think the problem is going to be with not having enough. I think the problem is going to be about reaching out to the appropriate quarters and to seek collaboration. Someone says when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. But someone now says, no, when the going gets tough, the tough seeks collaboration. So I have not seen the effort being made to collaborate. And please note, if we do not do this on time, because you see, these things are time sensitive. If we remove them from those homes, we have not removed the homes from them. And it is only through intervention, mental intervention, therapy, and the rest of that, that the homes can be removed from them. Though we are removing from the home, if you do not do the needful, the home will continue to be in them. Their case may be worse than when they were in the home, because we are going to think that they are out, that they are free. Meanwhile, they are living in their own prison. They are not able, so it becomes their own, nostalgic feeling and all of the rest of that. And that is why we cannot afford to end the matter when these children are rescued. We must be interested in the medical plan, in the collaborative effort of government in ensuring that these children are treated.
Mr. Akinlami, wherever you turn, the statistics is bleak for the Nigerian child. Out of school, nutrition, sexual abuse, violence in general, the statistics is not encouraging. And I do recall many years ago when I interviewed you, you were sexually abused before you turned 5 yourself. Let me ask you, do you think that the Nigerian society has changed since you were abused and the kind of help you got after? Do you think that we understand the gravity of securing the rights of the Nigerian child? What is different for you?
Okay, I lost my virginity at the age of 6. That's the year I started primary school. If childhood was synonymous with innocence, I never knew innocence. I suffered multiple levels of abuses: physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect. I think that what has happened today is that there's more awareness, than when I was growing up. There was a taboo, everything that has to do with abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, and all of that were shrouded in secrecy, very fearful secrecy. You dare not talk about it. The truth of the matter is that my mother died at the age of 67 in 2009. I was 39 years old. She never heard my story. My father died that same year at the age of 82. He never heard my story. I think my family members started hearing my story when I started sharing it publicly. And they were wondering, you mean you went through that, it was also news to them, because it was something that I heard there, because I felt there was nobody that was going to respond to me. I felt it was safer for me to keep to myself than to speak out, because I felt that if I spoke out, I would become, double victim. My mother might be asking me, so you too, what were you doing when she was doing that to you? So we have perfected the art of blaming the victim and telling the victim. Lecturers in the university are sexually molesting children, because you find 16-year-old in the university, everybody below 18 is a child. You find 17 years old in the university, and these lecturers, with their stinking mouth, they'll come and tell us that the reason why they are doing that is because of what the girls are wearing. So I ask the question, if your daughter is wearing what your daughter is not supposed to wear, are you going to tell your daughter to lie down and sleep with her? And when you are asked, why are you doing what you are doing, you will say, yes, it's because of the way she was dressed, and I wonder, that's why I slept with my daughter. They forget that they are there in local parenting. So this is the question. I think there's a level of awareness now that is different from where I was growing up. Now, because population has increased, so also the figure about abuse has also increased. But again, I think one thing that has happened is that there are more people now willing to come out and talk about their experiences. There are more children that are being rescued. For example, in Lagos State, where I live, you find that there is a high level of awareness. The Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team, OPD, Ministry of Women Affairs, and Ministry of Youth and Social Development, all of these organizations have opened their doors for people to come and report abuses. And I think there's a lot of that going on. But let me quickly tell you, the report on violence against children in 2014 found that no matter how many children that are reporting now, majority of children also may not be reporting because they believe they will not be believed. So when it comes to the issue of abuse, I think we might have taken 1 or 2 steps forward. Not in terms of protection of children, most importantly, but most in terms of children being able to come forward. But my own philosophy when it comes to protection of children is that enlightenment is superior to enforcement. We must embark And that's what I've been doing, embarking on the journey of enlightenment everywhere I go to let children understand what their rights are, what their responsibilities are, so that they can defend those rights and live up to their responsibilities. Again, I believe that parents need to be empowered to be able to stay with their children. You know, in Iceland, it was found that teenagers were becoming impossible. They were getting drunk. They were behaving irresponsibly. And the state asked a question. Why are teenagers behaving irresponsibly? And they found that the teenagers that were behaving irresponsibly were teenagers that their parents were not spending time with. What did the government do? The government started a scheme where they began to reward parents. Spend 1 hour with your children, we give you so amount. Spend 2 hours with your children, we give you so amount. In less than 5 years, that role was reversed because parents were able to spend time with their children. You see, when a child is abused, there are 3 culprits. The first culprit is the person who is saddled with the responsibility of protecting this child. That is the parent, or the people that the parent gave the child to look after. The second culprit is the person who capitalizes on the loophole created by the person who is primarily responsible for protecting the child and now abuses the child. The third culprit is the person who is aware that the child is being abused and keeps quiet or support the person who has abused the child. Now, when we want to talk about abuse in Nigeria, we address only the culprit, the middle culprit, the person who perpetrated the abuse. We do not address the person who created the enabling environment and why the person created the enabling environment. We do not address the person who kept quiet and why the person kept quiet. Until we began to look at this matter holistically, we address the person who created the loophole. Why was he not with his children or with our children? We address the person who actually committed the offense, because a lot of times those who abuse children were themselves abused when they were grown up and they never find help. Then we address the person who kept quiet. Why did the person keep quiet? Is it because of stigma? Is it because of fear? Is it because of all of that? Until we begin to have this holistic approach in addressing this issue, we are just going to be beating dead horse. We're going to find that children being abused in droves, and we lament, and we cry, and we sing died, and all of that, and we come back to the same point.
Okay, real quickly, I just wanted to ask you this. I mean, you talked about them a lot, and you talked about the need to address this in society. I think it was M.K. Abiola of blessed memories that said, the day water drawers, wood hewers discover their destiny, they don't draw water any longer, they don't hew wood any longer, they start to walk in the path of enlightenment. I want to talk about those, like you said, Frantz Fanon referred to as the wretched earth, the scorched of the earth, you know, those that it is very difficult, those that are living in abject poverty, close to 100 million Nigerians, that if you check worldpovertyclock.io now, about 6 of them will have entered the poverty scale in the course of this conversation. What can we do to ensure that these people are liberated? Because economic freedom brings about emotional freedom and social freedom. The reason why these people can't be manipulated is because of the fact that they don't have a freedom as such. What can be done to help these people? What can be done to liberate these people? I understand we've got a break coming up right about now. What can be done to set these people free? You just answer that quickly, but I will come and interject, and we'll probably go for a break and come back, and you'll have your full thoughts. Okay. But just latch on it, yeah.
Okay. Let me first comment your perception on these issues. You know, you have a way of looking at it holistically, so that can help us to address where the issues are. You see, because if you don't address the foundation of the problem, we'll just be begging the issues. So the foundational thing is this. Now, when poverty, in 2014 or thereabouts, I was attending a press conference organized by the former deputy governor of Lagos State.
Taiwo, we'll come back to you after this quick commercial break. We'll go for a break. We'll come back and talk some more.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right, still the morning show here on the Rise News. We're talking to Taiwo Akinlami, UNICEF consultant and child rights advocate. So I asked a question. I said, this water drawers, wood hewers, these people that fall under the very staggering stats. When the stats come out and say we've got the highest under 5 mortality in the world, we've have about 13.5 million pupils out of school. We're the open defecation capital of the world. You know, it's not us here in VI and Ikoyi that will be cited in that stat. It's these people. How do we liberate those people?
I'm not hearing. Hello?
The answer you were given to the last question.
Yes.
Good, yeah.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, see. I was saying that in 2014 or thereabouts, the former deputy governor of Lagos State was addressing a press conference. The Lagos State government had just declared war on child abuse in Lagos State and said it wasn't going to be business as usual, which was commendable. So I was invited to be part of that press conference where that was going to be declared as the Secretary General of Child Protection Network, Lagos State, an initiative of UNICEF. And so when we attended the meeting, the deputy governor read out the riot acts and said, as from now, this, and what will happen. So then I raised up my hand to ask a question. I asked the former deputy governor one simple question. I said, when you are talking about abuse, is it possible for parents whose existence are already abused not to abuse their children? I talk about those who live in densely populated area, who do not know where the next meal is coming from, who do not know who do not have roof over their heads, who cannot afford to send their children to school, who do not have access to good road, who cannot do any meaningful business. So I asked that when the existence of a people is abused, is it possible for them to abuse their children or watch their children abused without doing nothing? In our advocacy, in our work, we have found situations where just 20,000 naira exchanged hands between the parents of the abused child and the abuser, and we were locked out. We've seen situations where lesser amount as exchanged hands. I've taken children home who ran away from home because they misplaced 1,000 naira, and they knew they cannot go back home without that 1,000 naira. I have dealt with issue of child labor, and I've continued to say that the people who set their children on the street, they are not the children of the upper crust, political or social. They are the children of the house of wood and drawers of water, the oipoloi, the wretched of the earth. And I'm saying that until we address the issue of poverty, we are not serious about the protection of our children. That is my position. I've had shouting matches with different government officials in the course of meetings where they are trying to say that the parents who send their children to the street are wicked. And I said, well, that's a secondary issue. The primary issue is that you will enroll your children in your workforce when you do not know where the next meal is coming from, and there's no plan for family, there's no family planning. There's no government policy or mobilization like they did in China, saying, okay, because of population explosion, one family until recently became 2 children, 1 family. Now, so when we see all of this, we must begin to talk about social protection. That is why International Labour Organization told us like 4 or 5 years ago that the solution to child labor is social protection. So we need to empower people. Now, we cannot continue to talk, rationality ends where hunger begins, so says someone, that rationality ends when hunger begins. We must address the issue of poverty. We must address the issue of the average Nigerian who is living on less than $1 per day. We must address the issue, the state of the nation. Until we address, because the way we treat our children is a reflection of the state of the nation. Until we address that issue, until we address that poverty, until the leader become the servant and the led become the king, we are not going to move forward. So I agree with you completely. And I think what we need to do is to begin to lead an advocacy that speaks truth to power, not antagonize power, but speaks truth to power, in the sense that we need to recognize that when we protect our children, we are protecting our future. When we alleviate poverty, we are preparing our children for a glorious future. It was Franklin Roosevelt that said, we may not be able to prepare the future for our children, but we may be able to prepare our children for the future. But what should a great nation do? A great nation must do both. Prepare the future for our children and prepare our children for the future. But the question is, which of them are we doing? Are we preparing our children for the future, and are we preparing the future for our children? Sadly, I must tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that we are not doing both. We are not preparing the future for our children. We are not preparing our children for the future. And I wonder the kind of nation that we are going to bequeath to our children. I wonder the state in which we are going to return this nation to our children that we borrow it from. So this is my own thinking about the matter. We must continue to lead an advocacy that looks at the root of the matter, which is to speak truth to power, to continue to agitate, agitate very peacefully, and begin to ask for the rights of children to be respected, and begin to ask for jobs to be created for parents, and begin to ask for the public education institution that has to do with education to be revived. The health sector should be revived for the public sector. Shelter should be revived for public sector. We need to revisit what the likes of Jakonde did, Alhaji Lateef Jakonde did in Lagos State. They said the houses were poorly built and all of that, but those houses still exist today. And many Nigerians were able to become landlords irrespective of their state. All of that needs to return. We need to begin to ask ourselves the question: if 13.5 million Nigerian children are out of school, why are they out of school? How many schools do we now need to build? How many teachers do we need to hire? How many teachers do we need to train? All of these things are things that need to be systematically advocated for and bring to the attention of government, and continue to agitate until all of these things are done.
Now, we know that in 2001, Nigeria signed the Abuja Declaration to earmark about 15% of its federal budget to healthcare. However, when the 2020 budget was released, we're seeing just 4.3% of that being set aside for the total budget of health. Now, we know that even with that, in physical health, a lot of things are still being ignored. How do we make sure that this 2020 budget covers the mental health? Because according to this, about 50 million Nigerians are suffering from mental health conditions, and they don't even know.
Well, insanity is a major problem in Nigeria. People cannot be sane when they are in Maslow's hierarchy of need. The barest need is psychosocial need. That's the barest one. What shall we eat? What shall we drink? By what shall we be clothed? That is the barest need. When people are not able to meet those needs, they cannot be sane. That figure of 50 million Nigeria cannot be correct. It's more than that. It's just that we have learned how to, suppress our pain and suffer and smile. That is what is going on. Many people are not sane. Many people don't know what is going on. And that is why you find the government signing a document, and in the very eyes of the people, deviating for the same government. When you have an Abuja declaration that says 15% of the annual budget and the national budget must go into health, and you now find the 2020 budget say allocating only 4%, you see that that is a deviation from the policy. As long as we continue to have that kind of deviation, as soon as government cannot live to the integrity of their integrity and the dignity and honor and the efficacy of the document that they sign, we are going to continue to have this kind of situation. I must tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that we must, as a matter of necessity, continue to speak truth to power, continue to advocate and agitate, bring the attention of the people. People need to begin to ask questions from their representatives in the National Assembly, in the state houses of assembly. We need to begin to ask critical questions. We need to ask your representative from the National Assembly, for example, when they bring this budget to you, why are you not going to ask questions that this budgetary allocation is supposed to be 15%? Why is it 4.5%? Those are questions the legislators must ask, because they're supposed to be there for checks and balances. Now, but when we, the people who elected, we are not able to hold accountable and responsible our representatives from our senatorial district, from our constituencies, both at the national level, at the state level, then what begins to happen is that the people in power develop amnesia. They are not aware of what is going on, because nobody really is actually agitating and calling their attention to what is going on. And so what we need to do is to begin to ask questions. If a representative of the people knows that if I don't defend these people, When the president presents a budget before the National Assembly, when I go back to ask for their vote, it's going to be difficult for them to give me their vote because they're going to ask me, where were you when the budgetary allocation was less than what government agreed and all of that?
Mr.
So until we
Akinlami,
begin to do that, we are going to remain in the same place.
Indeed. Thank you so much for your insights on the protection of the Nigerian child today and also advocating their rights. Mr. Taiwo Akinlami, we appreciate your appearance on the show today. Well, that brings us to the end of the show. I am Adesua Omorwan.
I'm Rafai.
The entire team here in Lagos, enjoy the rest of your morning and, of course, the rest of your day. Bye.